Millions gasp. Judges freeze. The crowd rises to its feet before the first chorus even ends. And somewhere between the lights exploding and the final note hanging in the air, you realize you're witnessing the moment a dream finally refuses to be ignored. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happens after that last note will leave you inspired in ways you don't expect, and if stories like this move you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss moments that remind us why dreams matter. He stood alone backstage, fingers trembling just enough to betray the calm smile he practiced in the mirror. His name was Mateo Cruz, a Filipino immigrant who grew up in a one-room house near Cebu, where electricity flickered more often than hope. As a boy, Mateo didn't have toys, but he had a radio. Late at night, when the world finally went quiet, he would tune in to crackling stations and hear a voice unlike any other. Elvis Presley. To his neighbors, it was just noise. To Mateo, it was escape, courage, and a promise that life could be bigger than the walls around him. His father, a fisherman, laughed gently when Mateo sang. His mother, exhausted from long days sewing clothes for neighbors, always listened. She never clapped loudly, never praised too much. She just smiled and said, "Sing again tomorrow." That was enough. Years later, when Mateo packed a single suitcase and boarded a plane to America, it was that smile he carried with him, not knowing if the world he was chasing would ever notice him. America was louder, colder, faster. Mateo washed dishes, slept in shared rooms, and sent money home whenever he could. Some nights, he sang on street corners for spare change, his voice echoing off concrete instead of palm trees. People stopped, stared, recorded, then walked away. A few smiled. Many didn't. But Mateo kept singing. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the feeling he had as a child, when music made the future feel possible. America's Got Talent wasn't part of the plan. A coworker filled out the application as a joke. Mateo almost didn't show up to the audition. He had been told no too many times. Too different. Too old-fashioned. Too much like someone else. Another Elvis impersonator, they said. But standing in line, surrounded by dancers, magicians, and singers with perfect hair and perfect confidence, Mateo felt something settle inside him. This was his moment to be heard, even if it was his last. When he walked onto the AGT stage, the lights nearly blinded him. The judges glanced at one another, polite but cautious. The audience murmured when he introduced himself as a Filipino Elvis tribute artist. Expectations dropped. Cameras zoomed in, ready to capture either something forgettable or something embarrassing. Mateo took a breath, closed his eyes, and remembered his mother's voice. "Sing again tomorrow." The band hit the first note. And then everything changed. His voice didn't imitate Elvis, it channeled him. Raw, powerful, aching with history and hunger. Each note carried years of sacrifice, loneliness, and unspoken dreams. The swagger was there, but so was vulnerability. The crowd leaned forward. Judges' smiles faded into disbelief. Phones shot into the air. By the second verse, people were already standing. By the chorus, the room exploded. Millions watching at home gasped. Not because he sounded like Elvis, but because he sounded like someone who needed to be heard. When Mateo moved across the stage, it wasn't choreography. It was memory. When he sang the final note, he held it just long enough to let the silence speak for him. The silence didn't last. The audience erupted. One judge stood, shaking their head in disbelief. Another wiped away tears. Comments flooded in online instantly. "Who is this man? Goosebumps. I'm crying." For the first time in his life, Mateo felt seen not as an immigrant, not as a copy, not as a background voice, but as an artist. Then came the hardest part. Success didn't erase fear. Online praise mixed with criticism. Some said he was disrespecting a legend. Others said he'd never make it past the next round. Mateo almost quit. Again. But this time, something was different. Messages arrived from the Philippines. Kids singing Elvis in tiny rooms. Parents saying, "My child believes now." His mother called, her voice shaking. "Sing again tomorrow," she said. So he did. Each round pushed him harder. Bigger stages. Bigger expectations. He stumbled once, his voice cracking under pressure. The internet noticed. Doubt crept back in. But instead of hiding it, Mateo leaned into it. He told his story. He sang not just with power, but with truth. The judges didn't just hear him, they felt him. When the final performance arrived, Mateo walked onto the stage calmer than ever. He knew now that winning wasn't the point. Being heard was. He sang like a man who had already made peace with his journey. And when the last note faded, the crowd rose again, louder than before. Whether he took the trophy or not no longer mattered. That night, millions didn't just watch a performance. They witnessed resilience. They saw what happens when talent meets persistence, when culture meets courage, when a dream refuses to stay quiet. And somewhere, a young kid listening to a radio in a small room felt the same spark Mateo once felt. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that your voice matters no matter where you come from, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because there are more stories like this, stories that deserve to be heard. And remember this, dreams don't die when the world doubts you. They die only when you stop singing. Millions gasp at the same time. The judges stop breathing. The crowd doesn't wait for permission, they explode to their feet. And before you even realize it, you're watching a moment that will be replayed, reposted, and remembered for years. Don't blink, and stay until the very end of this story, because what happens after the final note is even more powerful. And if this kind of story gives you chills, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because moments like this deserve to be shared. He stood behind the curtain, eyes closed, lips moving silently as if praying to the music itself. His name was Rafael Raf Domingo, a Filipino man who grew up with dust on his feet and dreams bigger than his village. In his childhood home in Pangasinan, the walls were thin, the roof leaked during storms, and the radio was older than he was. But when Elvis Presley's voice crackled through that radio, everything else disappeared. Hunger faded. Fear faded. Poverty faded. There was only rhythm, soul, and hope. Raf learned English by copying Elvis lyrics he didn't fully understand. He learned confidence by singing in front of mirrors made from scratched glass. His classmates laughed. His teachers warned him to be realistic. Music doesn't feed a family, they said. His father believed them. His mother didn't argue, but every night, she listened from the kitchen, pretending not to cry as her son sang like his life depended on it. When Raf left the Philippines, it wasn't heroic. It was desperate. One suitcase, borrowed money, and a promise to send something back home even if it was just proof that he tried. America didn't welcome him with open arms. It greeted him with long shifts, aching hands, and rejection letters. He sang in karaoke bars where people talked over him. He dressed like Elvis and was told he looked ridiculous. Some nights, he slept in his car, humming melodies just to stay warm. Auditioning for America's Got Talent felt like stepping into a dream that could collapse at any second. Standing in line, he heard vocal runs sharper than knives and saw performers polished to perfection. He nearly walked away. "I don't belong here," he whispered to himself. But then he remembered why he sang in the first place, not to win, but to survive. The moment he stepped onto the AGT stage, skepticism filled the room. A Filipino Elvis? The judges smiled politely. The audience waited to be convinced. Raf introduced himself softly, his accent thick, his hands shaking. Then the music started. The first note cut through the room like lightning. It wasn't imitation. It was resurrection. His voice carried grit, pain, longing, and fire. The swagger was there, but beneath it was a man who had fought too hard to be ignored. The audience leaned forward. One judge's eyebrows shot up. Another whispered, "Oh my God." By the time Raf hit the chorus, the crowd was already losing control. Social media exploded in real time. Millions at home gasped, then screamed, then cried. This wasn't just talent. This was a story pouring out through sound. When Raph moved across the stage, the arena goes silent for half a second and then the gasp hits like a wave. Mouths open. Eyes widen. The judges forget their lines. Millions watching at home lean closer to their screens, knowing instinctively that this is not just another audition. This is one of those moments you tell people about later. Stay with this story until the very end, because the final seconds change everything. And if stories of impossible dreams coming true give you chills, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss moments like this. Backstage, under harsh white lights, Jonah Reyes presses his palms together to stop them from shaking. He is dressed like a legend, but inside he feels like that same skinny Filipino kid who used to sing into a broken electric fan, pretending it was a microphone. He grew up in a crowded neighborhood outside Manila, where houses leaned into each other and privacy didn't exist. What did exist was noise, traffic, neighbors, hardship, and above it all, Jonah's voice, trying to be louder than the life he was born into. His father wanted him to be practical. His friends told him to be realistic. Elvis Presley posters on the wall didn't pay bills. But Jonah sang anyway. He sang at fiestas, weddings, funerals, anywhere someone would let him. When his mother got sick, music became the only thing that kept him steady. When she passed, music became the only way he knew how to grieve. Elvis wasn't just a style to him, it was survival. Moving to America was supposed to fix everything. Instead, it broke him in new ways. Accents were mocked. Doors closed politely. Jonah worked night shifts, slept during the day, and sang whenever loneliness got too heavy. He was told again and again that the world didn't need another Elvis. That the dream was already done. That legends couldn't be touched. America's Got Talent felt like a last door. Not the first. The last. Standing on that massive stage, Jonah sees the doubt before he hears it. A Filipino Elvis impersonator? The smiles are careful. The applause is polite. The cameras zoom in, waiting to see if this will be magic or a mistake. Jonah swallows hard and thinks of home. Of his mother's voice telling him, if you're scared, sing louder. The music starts. And the room transforms. His voice crashes through the theater with power, soul, and something deeper, truth. This isn't imitation. This is lived in pain wrapped in melody. The swagger is there, but so is vulnerability. Every note carries sacrifice. Every move carries memory. The audience leans forward without realizing it. One judge's jaw drops. Another grips the table. Somewhere in the crowd, someone starts crying. By the time Jonah hits the chorus, the audience can't contain itself. People are standing. Screaming. Cheering like they're watching history unfold. Millions at home gasp as the comments explode, goosebumps. I wasn't ready. This is unreal. Jonah closes his eyes on the final note and lets it fly, not caring what happens next. Silence. Then thunder. A standing ovation shakes the room. Judges are on their feet. One of them struggles to speak, finally saying, that was not a performance. That was a life story. Jonah's legs weaken. He bows his head, overwhelmed. For the first time, the world didn't just hear him, it listened. But the journey doesn't smooth out overnight. The pressure doubles. The praise turns into expectation. Critics sharpen their words. He peaked too early. It's just nostalgia. Jonah feels doubt crawl back in, heavier now because he has something to lose. During rehearsals, his voice falters. Fear whispers that this is where the dream ends. He almost quits. Instead, he remembers why he started. Not to be perfect. Not to replace a legend. But to honor the boy who sang into a fan and believed music could save him. So he evolves. He blends Elvis with his own story. He lets his Filipino roots show. He sings with less polish and more heart. The judges notice. The audience feels it. Something real is happening again. When the final performance arrives, Jonah walks onto the stage calm, grounded, and ready. Win or lose, this is his truth. He sings like someone who has already survived. Every note lands with purpose. Every lyric feels earned. And when it ends, the reaction is immediate, another eruption, another wave of belief. Whether he wins the title becomes almost irrelevant. Because that night, millions didn't just watch a show. They witnessed perseverance. They saw what happens when talent refuses to bow to doubt. A Filipino Elvis didn't destroy the AGT stage with flash, he did it with heart. Somewhere, a child with a borrowed dream feels braver. Somewhere, someone who almost gave up decides to try one more time. If this story inspired you even a little, tap like and subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming. And remember this, legends may inspire us, but courage is what turns inspiration into history. The first note hasn't even finished, and the entire theater gasps like the air has been stolen from their lungs. One judge's hand flies to their mouth. Another leans forward, eyes wide. Somewhere in the crowd, a scream breaks through the music. And right now, wherever you're watching from, you already know this is not an ordinary audition. Stay with this story until the very end, because what happens after the final note will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. And if moments like this remind you why you believe in dreams, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that inspire millions. His name is Adrian Flores, and just minutes earlier, he was standing alone behind the stage curtain, whispering lyrics to calm his shaking hands. He didn't look like someone about to shock the world. He looked like a man carrying years of quiet struggle on his back. Adrian grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where nights were dark and the sound of waves mixed with old songs playing from a battered radio. That radio was his window to another world. And through it came Elvis Presley, bold, fearless, alive. To a boy who often felt invisible, Elvis sounded like freedom. Adrian's family didn't have much. His father worked long days under the sun. His mother stretched every peso until it nearly broke. When Adrian sang, neighbors would peek through open windows. Some smiled. Others laughed. They told him singing was a hobby, not a future. But every time life felt too heavy, Adrian sang louder. It was the only thing that made him feel seen. Years later, he left the Philippines with a suitcase full of clothes and a heart full of hope. America was supposed to be where dreams came true. Instead, it tested him at every turn. His accent drew snickers. His Elvis style drew eye rolls. He worked exhausting jobs, sometimes 3 in a day, and sang at night when loneliness crept in. There were nights he questioned everything, his talent, his choices, his worth. But quitting felt worse than failing. America's Got Talent wasn't a dream, it was a last chance. Adrian didn't expect much when he stepped onto that massive stage. The judges smiled politely, already unsure. The audience clapped, curious but unconvinced. A Filipino Elvis impersonator wasn't what they expected. Adrian introduced himself softly, voice trembling just enough to reveal his nerves. Then the band started. The moment his voice filled the room, the energy changed. It wasn't imitation. It was power shaped by pain. His voice carried years of rejection, sacrifice, and stubborn hope. Every movement was confident, but every note was honest. The crowd leaned in without realizing it. One judge's eyebrows shot up. Another whispered something into their mic, stunned. By the time Adrian hit the chorus, the audience was already rising to its feet. Millions watching at home gasped. Comment sections exploded. This wasn't just talent, it was a story pouring out through music. When Adrian closed his eyes on the final note, it wasn't for drama. It was survival. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then the room erupted. A standing ovation shook the theater. Judges clapped harder than they ever had. One of them stood and said, "That wasn't a performance, that was a moment." Adrian felt his knees weaken. For the first time in his life, he wasn't trying to prove himself. He already had. But success doesn't erase fear overnight. As the competition continued, pressure crept in. Expectations soared. Critics grew louder. "He can't top that," they said. It's just nostalgia.